Okay, hello everyone, welcome back to the Common Room podcast. My name is Ninja and I'm your host for this season where we explore stories from different students and graduates across the world in relation to their environmental journeys. And today we have a very special guest with us, my childhood friend Nived. So welcome Nived!
Hi. Sorry, I wasn't sure if I should say something.
So yeah, I'm very excited to have you on this episode of the podcast actually.
Thank you.
Thank you
Very
so
happy
much
to be
for
here.
Yeah, thank you for being here all the way from India.
Represent.
So for our viewers to learn about you the same way that I know you, because we've known each other since we were babies, basically.
Yep.
I thought we could do a quick rapid fire. Also because I know you're like super into like pop culture and yeah, just a little fun rapid fire for our listeners to know you better. So the first thing, because it's just necessary, what did you study at university?
I majored in literary and cultural studies, and I minored in psychology.
Nice, cool. Second question, what is an album that takes you back to your childhood? So when you listen to that album, you're immediately taken back to your childhood in some way or the other.
I mean, it would probably have to be
Taylor Swift's Fearless. That was a great album. We listened to it on repeat in the car every single. Like I could probably.
Truly,
Yeah,
it's a staple. It's a staple on any road trip that you go on.
exactly. I could probably still sing along to every single song.
Every single one.
Great. The third question: what is a movie or a book you're reading or watching right now that you would recommend to our listeners? Anything right now that you are currently reading?
I actually just finished Anya Yanigihara's A Little Life,
Okay.
which was really long. It was over 700 pages. It is. I don't know if I'd recommend it to people because there was a lot of trauma, like trigger warnings for practically everything. But it was one of the best written books I've read. It's really good.
Okay. Could you say the title and the author one more time?
A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara.
Nice. Okay, we'll put it in our description on Instagram so you can have a look at it if you are interested. And this is a book you're reading.
This is the book that I'm reading.
And a movie maybe that you're watching that you would recommend, or something you watched
something I watched
recently that you.
Yeah, my sister and my sister just left for to go back to the UK, and just before she left, we did like a back to back of A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place 2, which is I think the only horror movie I've ever been able to watch. But it's really good. I'm a big sci-fi fan, so it was a good movie. And John Krasinski and Emily Blunt.
Emily Blunt, oh, a couple goals. Okay, nice. Okay, next question. Which Gilmore Girl character are you?
Oh my God. Which Gilmore Girl character am I? I mean,
It's okay.
just, yeah, it really sucks, but I did a rewatch during the pandemic and I related the most to, unfortunately, Rory Gilmore, who's my least favorite character. The girl is so annoying. She's so annoying. She makes bad decisions at every turn. And like, I'm sorry, but like when someone like Logan, oh, it's spoiler alert. But when someone like Logan Huntsman asks you to marry him, you say yes. Okay, you're set for life. But yeah, I think I relate the most to her, even though she's my least favorite character.
Okay. And what is one Indian food that you will always love, and one that you hate? So an Indian food that you love and an Indian food that you hate.
Probably one that I love is like dosas. Like that's a staple. I have it for breakfast every single day.
Dosas are good.
And I suck at making dosas. They always come out really clumpy. Like I never know how to spread it properly. I'm still trying to figure that out. But yeah, so I'm really gonna miss, I think, eating them every day. Once I start cooking for myself. And then one that I hate, I'm not sure. There's a lot I've learned that like because Indian food differs depending on like home cooked meals or when you go to the restaurant. But I hate mangoes, which is like such an Indian, I think, staple fruit.
It's
But
so
oh my,
controversial because
like I'll throw up just thinking about it. It's one of the
mangoes are so
worst.
good.
No, they're not. Raw mango with chili and salt. Yes.
So
Mango
juicy.
pickle, amazing. Mango pickle, incredible.
I don't understand.
Yellow ripe mango is the devil's fruit. It should not exist.
No.
Anyway,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And then the last question. What is a song you're listening to right now?
A song I'm listening to right now. The Bleachers, which is the one-man band by Jack Antonoff, just released his album. So I think it released yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. So I've been listening to that album.
Hey, nice.
Yeah.
Great. You know, a song I've been listening, or a band I've been listening to right now is the Driver's Era or the Driver Era with
Nice.
Roslyn, another childhood
Iconic.
Iconic.
Yeah. I know. He's played a lot of amazing roles, but he will forever be immortalized in the Teen Beach movie.
Teen Beach movie. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Remember when we learned the entire Cruising for a Bruising?
The entire choreography. Incredible.
Amazing. Okay.
So I know because I know that this is a podcast, but I also know it's a conversation. I keep hearing myself slip into like my presentation voice, which is like my white people voice.
I'm already in that. I'm already in that.
I know. And then I catch myself and I'm like, dosa. Go back to yourself.
But I do that as well. And I've done it throughout the previous podcast. So now I have to do it for consistency. So
there you go. Okay. So I'm going to try and catch myself if I find myself slipping.
So if we sound like white people, we're very much brown people. But
yes, if you couldn't tell from our names.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was a rapid fire, which was great. Thank you so much for answering those questions. I'm going to move into the next section of the podcast episode, where I'm just going to ask you a little bit about your backstory and just a little bit more about you and your journey before university. So yeah, could you just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So it's, I think, pretty similar to yours, given that we
grew up together.
But we both went to, I'm just saying this, I know you know this, but we both went to Pathshala Montessori School, I think until 5th, 6th grade.
In South India.
In Chennai, yes, in Chennai, in India. And then after that, after Pathshala, we both went to the school KFI, also in Chennai. And you left and did your 11th and 12th in Rishi Valley, but I stayed on. Yeah. I loved KFI was probably like I think shaped us into who we are. I think our love for everything that we currently love, like a lot of it stems from KFI. But I then I did a specialization in humanities in my 11th and 12th. And after that, I went to Pune to study literary and cultural studies in Flame University. Yeah. Okay. And now I just took a year off and I've been working as an editor.
Nice. Great. And also, because with KFI schools, for those who don't know, our schools were very special because they were situated
alternative
and also beautiful campuses. Like we were in the heart of the city, but in like 17 acres of like nature and things like that. And I know for that really impacted my sort of relationship with nature and the environment. So I wanted to ask you, like, just instances in your childhood, or even the fact that you were also in this KFI school and surrounded by nature, like things that you can remember that you feel like really maybe confronted you. No, I'm kidding. So I asked Nived earlier. Yeah, this is a funny story. I asked Nived earlier if he's had any instances in his childhood that have confronted him about the environment. And then he was just very confused by the choice of the word confronted.
Yeah, because when you say confronted, I was like, okay, times that I've been attacked by nature, which is really embarrassing because anyone who knows me knows that when I was in KFI, we were playing Frisbee and I was very over-enthusiastic and I ran into bushes and sliced my leg open on like a cactus and had to be carried to the ER and have 7 stitches.
Oh my God, I remember this.
Yeah. So the fact that like my most serious injury was caused by like
a plant
on campus. Yeah, exactly. So when she said confronted by nature, I was immediately like, the trauma pulled me back, into the past. But I don't know if there is any specific instance that I can recall. I think my parents have always been, though we've lived always in big cities, they have taken the time. So my mom's from Coorg, so we used to go every year to Coorg, which is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. And my grandparents own an estate there, so it's just huge, huge acres, and the estates are literally massive because elephants travel through them. There are sightings of big cats in the region, deer, etc., etc. So it's very, very. When you go into the estate, there is a lot of course, nature. There's a lot of animal wildlife confrontation also, which is bad because we've been encroaching on their territory, obviously. But so I've always, even though I grew up in the city, there's always been, I don't think there's ever been like a aha moment for me in terms of that. And like you said, all the campuses, the campuses I grew up on were also based in the Theosophical Society, which is like a reserve, a nature reserve preservation. And even Flame University was really lovely campus, but much more artificial. It was manicured lawns and very, anyway. But yeah, nature's always, I don't know if that answered your question at all.
Yeah, no, definitely. And also, just one more aspect of our childhood that I think was important, at least to me, was also our school trips that we went on.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to ask you about how that maybe affected you, or so maybe first just talk a little bit about what the school trip is, to explain to someone who doesn't know, and then, yeah.
So I think KFI really wanted us to be exposed to a lot of different things and a lot of new things. So every year we'd go on a school trip, and in middle school they weren't really academic related. It was more of like a camping outing that we go, and there was like a trip to Yerkad, a trip to Yelagiri, a trip to, I forgot the third place that we went to. But all these trips that took us, and we would go rappelling, we would do cross rivers. It was really a nice experience in terms of getting us in, learning a lot of different things. You know, learning how to read a compass, learning how to.
I remember that trip.
Yeah, learning how to compost, learning how that works, etc., etc. All of that I remember being part of the trip. And then later, in the later years, it does become more academic. It either focuses on history or geography, but also still very centric to obviously the environment.
Yeah, those were really good trips, I think, and really giving us.
In class 10, we went to Oroville, Sadhana Forest.
Oh yeah.
That was a really nice trip where we got to live in a place that generated almost zero waste.
Yeah, like a fully sustainable community. I think that for me was a big aha moment. Actually, now thinking back on it, I think that trip really shaped my love for sustainability, because I actually went back the next year or the years after that and stayed for longer. Okay, nice. And sort of now just moving into your university time, can you just like talk a little bit about where you went to college? Again, you already mentioned what you studied or majored in, and then just certain instances during your college career where you worked with the environment, or
Yeah, so even though Flame University is a liberal arts university, which they pride themselves on, which means that for your first year, you don't really major in anything. You take courses from all the disciplines, and then
is in India, right? It's in India.
Yeah, right? It's in India. It's in Maharashtra, which is in the middle of India. And yeah, so you take a bunch of different courses in your first year, and at the end of your first year, you decide what you want to major in, and you do that for the rest of your program. But because it prides itself on being interdisciplinary, you do find a lot of connects between either your major or minor, or just extra electives that you've taken. So and I've been a big fan of environmental studies and exploring that, even if I didn't major or minor in it. I did my my first year. We have to do internships over every summer. Over the first summer that my first internship, I worked with Resilient Chennai, which is an offshoot of the 100 Resilient Cities, which is an organization that just works towards building sustainable and smart cities. So during that, I did a lot of research work for them, and we worked on like a urban horticulture initiative, possibly for Chennai, which is kind of like we looked at how to make the public education's midday meal programs more sustainable, more nutritious.
Wow.
We looked at incorporating more greenery and more sustainable greenery into our architecture in India, in the new buildings that were there. How can we, because a lot of the trees are being cut down to widen the roads, expand stuff. So how can we balance both the expansion of a city and the progress that's made over there with also being a sustainable city, which was nice. I only worked with them for that summer. And then we also had to do a year-long research project, and it's called the Discover India program. It is literally just exploring any aspect within India, and you spend an entire year on it. You create a research team with your friends, you have a faculty advisor, you come up with your project, with a thesis, with a hypothesis, you do research work, and then over your Diwali break, which is in October, you go on field for 10 days and you collect your primary data. And then the remainder is you just analyzing the data, and then you write a report, you make a documentary and an exhibition, and then there's like a huge finale at the end where you present all your findings. And it's like a part of your credits that you need to graduate, so you need to finish it. And it was just, I don't even know if it was a coincidence or if it was something that my friend group was geared towards, but we ended up focusing on the environment again. We worked with one of the environmental science professors, Dr. Andrea Phillip, and our project was on local turtle-fisher interactions in Vengurla, which is this strip again on the West Indian coast. So
nice.
Yeah, it was really interesting. It was a great.
That actually reminds me of the turtle walks that we used to take with school.
Exactly. So a lot of these things that when you're talking to you expect there to be. I mean, these are the people who are probably going to be interacting with the turtles the most that are there. But the recent, obviously, endangerment of a lot of the turtles that are there causes there to be less and less. So it was really interesting to see how not only aspects like occupation and religion play a role in how the fishermen and fisherwomen interact with the turtles, but also things like caste, because you can't talk about, I think, any project in India without talking about caste.
That's important. So, unfortunately, yeah. Okay, nice. And then sort of just moving now into the journey ahead. So because I know you're graduated, congratulations. And you've been working for a year now as an editor. And so, what are your plans now that you're graduated?
So I'm currently still awaiting. The pandemic's really, I think, messed up a lot of things, obviously. But I'm still waiting for my visa. But I'm going to begin my master's in English at McGill University in Montreal this September, so in a month's time, I think. Nice. So yeah, just looking forward to that. That's the next step. Let's see where it takes me.
Yeah. And sort of, I know that you also had a previous sort of experience with protesting and marching in Canada because you went there on your exchange with your undergraduation, right? So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I did an exchange semester in Canada in my third year, and I went to Toronto, and it was just, again, I think good timing, etc. But there was a climate strike, climate march that was going on, the Toronto 2019, yeah, not even 2020, 2019 climate march that was happening in Toronto. And me and my friends who were there decided that like this would be obviously something that we're passionate about, something that, and it wasn't like, you see on the news a lot of people participating in climate movements, obviously necessarily, where they're putting themselves in situations where they get arrested or the police get involved, which is hats off to them for, putting themselves in that line, because it is obviously a dangerous thing to do. And if you do have the resources and the privilege to be in that position, to put yourself in that position, then that's great.
Yeah.
Thankfully, this protest was, I think, it was very peaceful. I didn't see any cops, thank God. But it was a great experience. There were like hundreds and thousands of people, and we marched through the city. I saw a lot of amazing posters, a lot of great creativity. And then at the end of the march, there were a couple of activists who got up and spoke and addressed the crowd, and then everyone dispersed. But it was a great experience, even if I wasn't there to see any of the potential repercussions or aftermath or good that it did, because I left shortly after. It was still nice to be a part of a crowd that all wants to march towards this one goal of making the world a better place.
Yeah, nice. That's really great. And sort of just leading into this conversation a little bit more, I know that you are part of the LGBTQ plus community. And so can you talk a little bit about just being part of this community and growing up in India? And then also, like, because this community does bring with it a couple of labels. And then in the same vein, do you consider yourself an environmentalist? Would you label yourself as that? Maybe first start with just what it was like to be part of the community in India, and then we'll move on to that conversation.
Yeah, sure. So it was definitely hard, I think, growing up in India and knowing that, you're not straight. But I was very, very fortunate. I'm one of the much more privileged people, being born into as first of all, a man in India. And then secondly, into an upper class family, being able to go to a private school, being able to, be surrounded by accepting friends and family, all of that. So when I did eventually come out, there wasn't as much a fear of being bullied or being actively discriminated against, just a fear of people treating me differently that was there, which I think is, again, such a privileged position to be in, especially in a country before homosexuality was even legalized, which it just recently was in 2018. So I think that it definitely was tough, but I had it very, very, very easy in comparison. And I found comfort in the labels initially. I think anyone who is questioning their identity in any way whatsoever finds comfort in labels, because the labels provide you with a sense of belonging. It provides you with a sense of a community, right? And then eventually, but I do think that the end goal is to move towards a world without labels, right? Yeah. Obviously, that's a utopia. I don't know if we'll ever achieve it, but that's always something to aspire towards. So, right, though I do identify as gay, I know a lot of people who, myself included, who simply, when we talk about ourselves or talk about this thing, we just say we're not straight, or we say we're queer. And I think the idea of labels, I don't look down on it, because I definitely needed it at that time. I definitely needed that sense of needing to belong. And even still, like when I say I'm not straight, when I say I'm queer, when I say I'm gay, all of those things are labels too, right? Yeah. So the only time we can live in a world without labels is when we live in a world where there is no, nobody sees any abnormality or any strangeness when it comes to that kind of thing. So I think following that vein, moving to your next question about whether I consider myself to be an environmentalist, I'm not sure. I think that the word environmentalist, I've always flagged towards people who devote their lives towards, making the world, combating climate change, making the world a more sustainable, a more distinct place, not just at a personal level, but also trying to achieve it at a more large scale level. So that's usually what I picture when I think environmentalist, right? And this is a hot take, but this is honestly like, I think environmentalist, I would consider myself like, if you care about the environment, that's just you being a decent human being. I don't know if that's you know whether that means that you are also an environmentalist. If you consider yourself to be one, then so be it. For me personally, I've just become to associate the word with people who attempt to drive huge changes in their communities in the world. And since I have not done that, I wouldn't consider myself to be an environmentalist, but that's again my own definition.
That's very interesting, because one of the reasons we actually started this organization and this podcast is because, at least with me, because I consider myself an environmentalist because I went to university, studied environmental science, I'm working in the field of environmental sciences. So in terms of your definition, I fit as an environmentalist. But I actually find that it's a lot of people do associate the environmentalists with all like this hippie community of vegans who walk barefoot and wear sunglasses. And I think for me, I really wanted to change that image. That, I mean, everybody, you don't necessarily need to study it to be an environmentalist. So in that same way, because we talked about it in the previous episode as well a little bit, do you think this label is necessary? Do you think it actually creates a divide amongst people who are like, oh, I don't create change in my community, so I don't consider myself an environmentalist. Whereas if we redefine the term to be like anyone who just cares about their community and cares about, because being an environmentalist, I feel like it's also being a humanist in some way, because you care enough to save the planet for humans to survive in, right? So what are your thoughts about that? Do you think the label is necessary, or does it?
That is interesting. I do think, I don't think I've ever thought about the term environmentalist as a divisive term, which is, I don't know. I think that's the first time that I've thought about, while I do agree with you that in that definition, that anyone who works towards making the world a more sustainable or a more green place, even if it's not on a large scale, but if it's in their own personal lives, just working towards, if that person is considered to be an environmentalist, then obviously I would consider myself to be, I would consider a lot of my friends and family to be. But I actually don't know if this may be controversial, but I don't know if the term matters in terms of making the change that's there. Again, because I don't think it's a divisive term. So I think that whether you're doing it at a personal level or you're doing it at a macro level, and whatever label you choose, as long as you're working to making the world a better place, either in your own life or in everyone else's life, I don't think what you choose to label yourself would matter. I don't know if the label environmentalist matters, because I think that the understanding that I have, and the understanding that I think a lot of my friends and family have, is that being an environmentalist, like I said, is just being a decent person. So I don't think we need a label for it, because it's just being a decent person.
That's actually interesting, because I want to bring another point in here, because I, as an environmentalist, moved from India to the Netherlands to pursue, just an undergraduate degree. And I found that being an environmentalist or just doing environmentally conscious things were way easier in the Netherlands, actually, for me. Like, for example, I'm like trying to be vegan, and that's more accessible here. Like, vegan food is more accessible here. So maybe can you talk a little bit about, because I know you're moving to Canada soon, as you mentioned, also for your master's.
Yeah, so how my practices will change.
But yeah, just like, what are some things, do you think you do any environmentally conscious things in India? Are there certain obstacles in India that you feel like are preventing you from doing things, and that you feel like you would do more when you move to Canada or to a country where it's more accessible?
Yeah, definitely. I think we have a lot of environmental problems in India, obviously. Even just in terms of like the most basic waste management, segregation of our waste that's there, while a lot of places have been implementing, like if you go around the city, again, this is limited to my city that I've grown up in and I've seen. There are different giant dustbins for recyclable and non-recyclable waste, but everything just ends up being dumped in the same container, regardless of what you where you put what. So there have been smaller initiatives. So my family started. We do our own composting and we do our own recycling, and we send it directly to. So we skip the government's thing, and we know of an NGO that picks up that we call, and they'll come and pick up our recyclable waste. So in terms of that, I know that there are small initiatives that are there. I know that Canada is a lot more conscientious about their waste segregation that's there. However, I see it's like when one thing goes up, the other thing comes down. For this thing, the 6 months I spent in Canada, while the waste segregation itself is really well managed, the amount of plastic on every single thing, in terms of plastic bags, in terms of packaging, was insane. Like the smallest amount of food would be like triple wrapped in plastic or something. And while, yeah, you're still disposing of it in the proper way, just the pure generation of it is harmful to the environment. And I know that at least in my city, we've gone towards moving. So all of the local shops, they charge you if you want to use a plastic bag that's there, and they encourage you to bring your own bags and bring your own bags from home to pick up the stuff that's there. We've moved towards paperless bags in a lot of the like big grocery stores in our in my neighborhood, etc. So like you do see both. I think India also suffers from the problem of being so heavily overpopulated, and so it's really difficult to manage just not even the waste, but also the production, because there's a constant demand for it, and there's a constant, and obviously the cheapest things are a lot more dangerous to the environment. And with the huge wage gap in India, there is a lot of people can't afford anything except the cheapest thing that's there. And a lot of times that's the thing that's most harmful to the environment. So then it's really not the population's fault. It's the fault of the system, the systematic this thing. And then taking again caste into consideration, the something like waste management in India is operated almost solely by lower caste laborers, by a lot of people who are oppressed in every way of their life, and forced into jobs like these, jobs in which there is the skyrocketing number of sanitation workers who have died during the pandemic. And the government has no information on the number of them, the cases that have been, the number of people who have died working in the sanitation departments, etc. So that's another huge problem in India, is that there is a clear societal hierarchical divide in terms of the environmental practices that are there, in the dangers of it.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I think that's also very informative to people who don't really know what's going on in India right now.
Again, that has, again, this is, please, this is things that I know it's nice, it's good always to hear, because I know not all the people know about caste in India, but this is coming from a upper caste person that's there. And I highly recommend using, if you are, whoever is listening to this, going and reading up a lot of research. I know a lot of research conducted by Dalit scholars, Dalit academicians, or
lower caste.
Just general Bahujan people who have researched this properly and have put out written work that is really easily accessible if you just do basic Google searches. So I do think that it's interesting to see how society then plays a role in this. This is very different from the question you asked me. I'm really sorry. I've gone off.
No, I think. But
I think my practices hopefully won't change much. I aim to compost at home also in Canada. I know that they are doing well in terms of segregation there. I am currently recently vegetarian. So I'm hoping to continue that in Canada also. I know it will be, I think, pretty easy as well in terms of doing that. So I'm not too worried about that.
Yeah.
And thankfully, my apartment's very close to my university, so I am on walking or cycling. So in terms of
Transport.
minimizing your carbon footprint, there's always that.
Great, nice. Thanks for that. And just sort of now to like wrap up this the conversation. Is there any like advice or just not even like or just any like open thoughts that you have to the listeners now about anything about maybe just this whole idea of how you also sort of interact with the environment or how people should see how you think people can approach it differently, or because you talk about how you don't think it's a divisive term and that labels can be comforting. So what is some just like an open thought or like an ending thought that you would like to give as a
okay, so that's a good, I think, combining both of those thoughts. It's always easier for you to change if you're having trouble breaking bad habits, especially concerning the environment. It is always easier to do when you have a community of support that's there. So, for example, our move towards composting in my own house, I know I would not have been able to see it through if I didn't have my parents. My mom is the one who started it, and she's the one who does most of it. But because I know that she is also composting, and I'm also composting, and our neighbors are also doing it. Like having that community where everyone is doing it helps you also drive. So even if you don't, you choose not to label yourself, or you choose to label yourself, I'm not sure that matters. What I think does matter is finding that support to just help you. So whether it's just in your local neighborhood, just your apartment, even like a local gardening club at whatever university you're studying at, or just within you and your friends who like have green thumbs, getting together or keeping each other updated on your own milestones, your own this thing. That's really easy. Like it's really easy to be vegetarian if a lot of your friends are also vegetarian, right? So I think rather than choosing labels, it's just about a community of support.
That's a really great thought, I think, as well, and really important. And I also find that very important because I'm able to do better when my community is able to support me to do better. And I think that this falls for a lot of things, not just with being environmentally conscious, with being a lot of things. And your community can help you. You can do it way better.
Very true.
Yeah, nice. Thanks for that thought.
No,
okay, so thank you so much once again for being here today and just sharing your thoughts.
Very welcome. I'm sorry for going on 50 different tangents and not doing a lot.
It was great.
Will please, like, on behalf of me, give something really, really nice and sweet to your editor because I really want them to not hate me after this.
Will do. Okay, so thank you guys once again for listening to this episode with Nived. If you want more information about this episode, maybe some of the resources that he talks about, you can go to our website, which will be up very soon at ourcommonroom.com. And also go to our Instagram page, Common Room, or you'll also find information about the episode in the page on there, and our Facebook as well, which is the Common Room. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I can't believe I'm doing this. I hate hearing YouTubers do this, but I'm gonna have to say this as well.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Comment down below. If you have any questions or anything, just put it on the comments. We'll be sure to answer them. Thank you so much once again for listening. Cue the outro.